All right, so we will get going with the Q&A part. And we are recording this, and we'll probably need to repeat your questions so we can capture it on the mic. So we're here with Houman Savoji, who was kind enough to give us a nice introduction to his projects about printing biomaterials. And now this is the part where we want to engage with him with a Q&A. And usually we start these off just by asking kind of a couple of human interest questions. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your career path, what got you into this field, and what brought you to Montreal.
First of all, thank you so much, Nicola, for the invitation. It's a great honor to be here. So yes, I did my bachelor in chemical engineering, and it was in process engineering. So basically, we were studying like how to design petrochemical plants and oil plants, piping, unit operations, those who are from chemical engineering background. So, and then
and this was in Iran?
This was in Iran. And then I got, so the biomedical engineering program was, so we are talking about 1997 when I got to my bachelor. So then biomedical engineering was pretty new during that time. Then I graduated in 2000 from my bachelor. And then there was this new program in Sharif University. Then I joined that through entrance exam. It was competitive. And so then during that time, tissue engineering just like started, to actually gain more attention in the community. But the drug delivery systems, a smart kind of drug delivery systems were really like hot topic. So I actually did my master's on a project that was interesting. So we were actually designing transdermal patches for delivering drugs through skins. So this was nitroglycerin. So this is basically for cardiovascular diseases. And then, so we actually designed this patch in one of the pharmatech in Iran. And then, so the pharmatech wanted to commercialize it. I think they actually filed the master file for this specific application to the Ministry of Health. And then I don't know what happened next. But anyway, then I worked 5 years in, so our country is very rich in oil and gas. So biomed doesn't have that much market. So I work in oil and gas industries as a process engineer. So with my background in process engineering, chemical engineering, right? So I actually work as a junior engineer, senior engineer later, and then in 2009, I immigrated to Canada. So first I worked for a year in University of Ottawa. So basically, during the time that I was working in industry, I was working also with membranes, polymeric membranes for gas sweetening. So sour gas sweetening, right? That they have H2S, right? So
sour gas? That's the word? Like
sour gas. Yeah. So the gas that has hydrogen sulfide.
Okay.
So, and this should be removed. And one of the techniques is using polymeric membrane to remove it. And there was a researcher and PI who is my mentor also. Now is at the University of Ottawa, pioneering in membrane science. So I joined as a visiting or kind of, visiting researcher in his lab. He wanted a kind of a researcher to work on a specific project, Canadian government project. So we designed this filtration and also gas sweetening membranes.
So is it fair to say that you didn't really have research in mind until this time?
No, I came to Canada and then I was looking, first to, integration takes time, and then I wanted to work, right? And then, I said, after this 1 year project that I had at the University of Ottawa, I said, okay, I always wanted to actually continue my biomedical engineering kind of, background, because there was a 5 year gap I work in oil and gas. And there was no position or market for this biomedical engineering there. So then I said, okay, now it's a good time to go back to school. So then I applied different universities, and so I actually got an interview with Dr. Mike Wertheimer here at the engineering physics department. And so he paid my actually travel to here to
That means a
visit.
lot, you
Yeah,
know, when
yeah,
you
yeah.
get your first invited
Exactly.
paid
Yeah,
lecture.
yeah, yeah. And then I came here. So anyway, I admitted to the PhD program in biomedical engineering at Polytechnic of Montreal. Then, then actually my co-supervisor joined the project, two co-supervisor, one Dr. Abdullah Aji, the other one Dr. Sophie Louge from Shum, Sir Shum. So then we had this project to make the vascular graft, artificial vascular graft.
And what time is this? This is
It is
2015?
2010.
2010. Okay, so right away after you came from. Right.
2009 to 2010, I was in Ottawa,
Mhm.
and 2010, I started this PhD. And then, so yes, we aim to make this small diameter vascular graft for coronary artery replacement with synthetic materials. So the technique that we were using on those days were electrospinning in Dr. Aji's lab, and then
Electrospinning is where you shoot these materials, kind of like
you have the polymers inside the syringe, and then it's like a spiders. Like the material comes like fibers
yeah.
from the needle and then sits on the collector.
Yeah, we've tried to build some phantoms for MRI with this
Oh, really?
method, just to kind of get, you know, the sizes of
Yeah,
the
yeah.
axons to kind of mimic
can do
axon
that.
behavior.
You can do that.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were always a little too big for what we were hoping for. Like these
So
are,
you wanted the smaller
we wanted
fibers.
1 micron, 2 micron,
Oh.
and then these are, you know, like
No,
20
no, no, no,
micron
no,
or
no.
something.
It's bigger.
Yeah,
It's big.
yeah.
Yes, that's true. So then, yes, this project was like 5.5 year. And then since I had also some health issues, so it took longer. Then, so PhD is not smooth. It's up and
But
down.
Polytechnique is hopefully pretty flexible with these things. Like I hope
Yeah,
they
yeah, yeah.
get
I
it
took
right.
some one semester off anyway. So, and then I moved. So I got the during my mass PhD, I got the FRQNT scholarship for foreign students.
That's the one I was telling you about. You know, the one I
Yeah.
spent 3 minutes evaluating.
Yeah, yeah.
But I wasn't evaluating back when you were
Okay.
applying. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was nominated by Polytechnic to apply to Vanier's scholarship, but I never got it. 2 times I was nominated because there is inter-school competition as well. So I never got it, but then I got after my PhD, I got two, not at the same time, but FRQNT postdoc scholarship and CIHR postdoc scholarship. So I wanted to go to United States, so to Harvard, and work in this institute, but because of my status, basically like Canadian status, permanent residency and stuff. So I'd rather, I stayed in Canada. So I changed my lab. I got the fellowship with the Harvard PI, but I actually transferred to University of Toronto. And then I actually spent 3.5 years in University of Toronto. And then after that, working more on bioprinting and organ on a chip, basically on heart on a chip and making vasculature on a chip using 3D printing technology. And then that's it. That's a short, and then I got the job here. I came back in 2020, just before pandemic, in January. It was difficult. I was excited. January till March. Very excited.
I remember that.
I wanna establish my lab. I wanna bring new students. We work hard and the stuff, and then COVID hit in March.
Yeah,
And then we
I
closed
remember.
everything.
I actually started my sabbatical in January, thinking
Yeah.
I'm gonna have a nice sabbatical
Nice,
year,
yeah.
and then we got locked up.
Dreaming. I was coming back, taking picture of Montreal, coming back to alma mater, this tower here at University of Montreal, like happy and stuff. I'm a social media guy also, like I post a lot on LinkedIn and stuff. So Then this hit, I mean, I was alone for 1 year and 2 months in the lab, buying stuff, establishing the lab, sometimes doing experiment myself if I had time, applying to grants. And then my students, because of delays in visa and other things, they were foreign students. They came 1 year later. I joined the school, so I lost almost 1 year.
So this is a very kind of roundabout way to
Yeah.
get to where you are.
Yeah.
Do you think that actually not going straight for a PhD was in any way useful to you? You know, getting all that experience before deciding that you want to do research?
Very good point. Yes, it was really helpful for me because actually I learned a lot on different positions that I actually took on my way, right? So I was junior engineer, for example, in industry. So I had to learn time management, project management, delivering the tasks. So to clients, to my boss, my manager. So these things I learned in industry, which is more fat. I mean, the pace is faster than in academia, and it's more oriented towards delivering the task and products, right? And then, so research also gives you some kind of, organization and critical thinking. When you get to the research, you learn how to criticize papers, how to read papers as another point of view. Where is the gap? Where is the innovation? Where do you want to do with this piece of work? What you learn from this work, and then you implement it to your work. So yes, all of these positions that I took in academia industry, and I mean, I took a lot of good things from them. And then now I'm using it in my own lab and in my own life. It's not only a work thing, it's life thing as well, from people around me. So that's it.
Cool. So maybe we can move on to asking some questions about your
Yes.
work. But the first question I have is, why was there a René Magritte painting in one of your first slides? Remember, like you're talking about building organs.
Yeah, Margaret. Yes, that was the vision. I love this painting because this guy looking at the egg, looking at the egg, but is painting an eagle, right? This is the vision that we have in the lab, and I have also in my own basically life and career. So this is really, I really enjoy this. This is surrealist painting. So I really like this specific painter.
No, cool, wonderful.
Belgium.
So let's start with the eggs and then,
Yeah,
get to the eagle.
Yes.
You're talking about, how we can create these artificial materials that are biocompatible.
Yes.
And you talk about stem cells as, one way to get them to develop into specific organs.
Exactly.
Now, you're talking about building the scaffolding with, temporary material. And then the one thing that probably you said, but I wanted to reiterate, and then do you put stem cells on that scaffolding so that it develops into an organ?
Exactly. So there are two ways. So we can have off-the-shelf material that basically when it's implanted, the cells in the blood circulation, because we have also stem cells in the blood. So they can go out, and progenitor cells. These are also kind of stem cells. They can go and they can attach to the leaflets and start attaching and then proliferating, expanding, and then they make their own basically a structure or like home, let's say, through secreting the proteins, right? And then, so this way is the valve or any tissue that is off the shelf, we put it in the body. So the body does the job itself. Stem cells in the body does the job. Or another way is that to actually put the cells in the lab on these scaffolds, mature them in the bioreactor to actually accelerate the process for the body.
Right.
So to make these tissues ready to be implanted, and the cells become also mature in the bioreactor during different simulation that we give them, for example, mechanical, electrical, or chemical stimulations. So yes, this is the whole idea.
So I've always thought that, if you don't preserve your stem cells when you're a baby, I don't know, your milk teeth or, your umbilical cord, that you cannot harvest them. But looks like we still have enough to be able to do that.
Yes,
from our blood.
in our blood, in our body fluids.
Got it.
saliva or urine or even blood or sweat, we can get the stem cells or even a skin, a piece of skin.
Cool. Now, when you create that scaffolding, you are limited by the resolution of the printers.
Exactly.
What resolution are we talking about? Like how fine can you make these structures?
So this, so it depends on different techniques, printing techniques. As I said, we are talking about micron-sized fibers in extrusion-based printer. It's around 100 micron that we can get these little fibers that we actually print layer by layer. For example, in case of heart valve. For example, let's say 10 micron with stereolithography printer, the VAT that we print 10 to 20 micron. It depends on the resolution of the machine as well, and also the material that you want to print. But so we have like looking at 10 micron, 20 micron to millimeter size, and so we can have a different range, like a window of resolution. But resolution, don't forget, we have a resolution in Z direction, we have a resolution in XY direction. Now we are talking about Z more, nominal, and most of the printer you buy or you get, they talk about nominal resolution because it depends on different factors, mainly your material.
Got it.
Because material property plays lots of roles in resolution of the final print. So don't be like kind of fooled by what the supplier says. For example, supplier says this is the 10 micron or even nano scale resolution, but what you really get in the lab is far from what they actually nominally say in their product.
Cool. So let's get to the eagle part then, or I
Yes.
guess in this case, it's the lamb part, because you said
Yes.
that a lot of these materials are best tested in lambs. Can you first explain why lamb, and then how far are we from actually implanting these things in lambs?
Yeah, so lamb is, as I mentioned, is the best animal model to test the heart valve in, because the mechanism of different diseases like calcification is really close to what happens in human body. This mechanism is not cannot be replicated in pigs or in rabbits, because those animals, they don't have the same physiology or pathophysiology like human in terms of calcification. So we are looking at calcification, and then we have to find a right animal model for that. For blood clot formation, we call it thrombogenicity. So pigs work, rabbits work, but for calcification, only lamb works. And these are very expensive animals. And with the current funding kind of, landscape, I don't think we can do it even with the CIHR. So we can do, so maybe we can get some partners from industry. So before that, we have to show lots of proof of validation, not proof of concept, validation, maybe even in a smaller animals, to actually give confidence to the investor or partners that this works, and then they can test it in lamb, right? So we are hoping to get there in maybe 3 to 5 years. 3 is kind of like something, because now we have a plan with our team to do this in rabbits, which is very difficult. We are not developing animal models with a cardiac surgeon. These little like raspberry size valve goes to rabbit, and then we test if the rabbit can survive with this, and we do some echo and see the opening, closing of the leaflets. And then if it's good, we go to pigs. And then after pigs, hopefully lambs.
And then humans, 30 years?
Humans, yes, we still have time to get there.
So I think this sets the stage. I would love to get some questions from the students. So please, Alyssa.
We're doing bioprinting that you embed cells into the biobank, right? I want to know, like, how long does it take to bioprint like a the valve, for example, then how do you make sure the cells are like well fed throughout the whole process?
So I'll just repeat the question. Basically, you insert cells into the ink when you print. What is the time scale of the creation of the valves?
So in this specific case, cells are not there. So this is acellular without cells. But now we are printing or bioprinting cells also with this that we are going to publish it. You will see it in a couple of months. So the whole process takes less than 1 hour. It depends on the size of the valve. If we want to print adult size valve, it takes around 1 hour. But if you want to print pediatric size, it's like 30 minutes or 40 minutes, something like this. So the only thing is that we have, the only difference is that with cells and without cells is incorporation and preparation of the cells beforehand. And these stem cells needs lots of maintenance and during, expanding and differentiation. So we may have like 1 month before printing for maintaining the stem cell differentiating to the valve cells. And then, because if you want to buy it, it's expensive. So we actually do it, differentiate them in the lab. So, and we need a lot. So we actually have to do lots of expansion in the tissue culture plates. So then we include it inside the bioink and then we print it.
Thank you. Well,
Beginning of the presentation, you mentioned potential new advances in bioprinting, mentioning using magnetic nanoparticles. And I was wondering, what do you think of potential of these kinds of things compared to the serial that you use for your
so
Both.
the question is about new technologies such as magnetic nanoparticles or going beyond the materials that you already use.
So first of all, non-contact printers like for example, extrusion-based printer or microfluidic printers that are contact, like you actually force your material and cells go through the narrow nozzle, right? But non-contact printer like a magnetic one or sound Faraday wave one, they are non-contact printers, so that you don't harm your cells with shear stress. Another thing is that the loading of the cells, for example, the density of the cells is limited in extrusion-based printer, because if you really put a lot of cells in and your hydrogel and then force them to go through the nozzle, they actually clog the nozzle. They create aggregates and they clog the nozzle, right? But in non-contact, like magnetic, like sound-based printers, you really don't have any limitation in terms of cell density. You can put billions of the cells and then you pattern them, right?
So what are the drawbacks of these kinds of?
The
What are the drawbacks?
magnetics and the sound-based
Yeah, for example.
drawbacks. So there might be, you cannot get complex tissue, for example, with these kind of things. One of the drawback is that because with extrusion base, you can really, as I shown in one of the example is heart valve. For example, imagine you want to create heart valve with magnet particle. It's really difficult to actually adjust your different magnets in such a way that patterns like a heart valve structure. And how do you want to like adjust them that they don't have overlap? And so really like the magnetic fields, overlap in the magnetic, it's really difficult. For simple structure, patterning, and this kind of things, it's easy and we can use, but it's really the limitation is the complex tissue printing with these new techniques, for example.
Is there, a limitation about the biocompatibility of using organic nanoparticles, for example, in the cell?
So the question is about the biocompatibility.
Nanoparticles have been shown to be biocompatible, but the problem with nanoparticles is that we have to make sure that if these are implantable kind of materials, we have to check the accumulation and biodistribution of these materials after they become released from the scaffold. Imagine you have an implant that it has nanoparticle inside, and then you implant it. Then over time, the scaffold is degradable. Then these nanoparticles start going everywhere. They goes to brain, they goes to kidney, they goes to liver, everywhere. So these things we need to actually beforehand check in the animal studies where they go. Are they going out of the body through urine, through other mechanism, or they're going to be accumulated in the brain or liver or kidney. So the size is important in terms of biodistribution. But we have gold nanoparticles, we have graphene nanoparticles, we have other nanoparticles that have been shown they are at certain concentration, they are biocompatible. It's all concentration dependent. So if you go higher, for example, graphene oxide that we use for conductive, to make the conductive hydrogel. So if you go higher than a certain concentration, they become toxic. But lower than certain concentration that we show, we actually work with graphene oxide. So they are biocompatible.
Thank you. Sujana?
Cells might aggregate at the tip of the nozzle when extreme pain. So do you think we can solve that by like having a co-extruding apparatus where we put the acellular ink in and then put cells in like a flow cytometry kind of mechanism so that we can figure out the extrusion?
Yeah,
So sorry, the question was a little bit more involved. So it had to do with a nozzle, but you were using some jargon. So maybe you can explain what the question is. And
so the question is that because I said the limitation of the, like, we have billions of cells and then we want to actually put them in the gel, and then this should go through the nozzle and then they clog the nozzles, these cells, they become aggregates. So she's proposing to have a core shell, kind of core shell nozzle that in
basically
the core,
two
yeah,
cells,
core,
one-
yeah,
okay.
one shell and one core. In the
Mhm.
core, we have the hydrogel, and on the around it the cells, right? So yes, there's a possibility, and people have done it. So we have a core shell nozzle. We have actually my master student did, Zainab did core shell printing using one cell on the sheet shell and then one in the core. So this is also there are lots of kind of approaches that you can use to actually address this problem as well.
Okay, thank you. Thomas?
So you talked about liver and heart in the chip. Are there any organs that are not well researched or not very like trendy at the moment that could be interesting to develop chip?
So the question is, we have certain organs on a chip, but are there other organs that are harder to put on a chip?
So very good question. I know your question from where you're asking. You want to find a novel project or novel research area. But I can tell you that, this field started in 2010 by the nominal work of Donald Ingber in Harvard University, who basically his team developed long on a chip, the first long on a chip platform. So, and now it's like 14 years, right? Now, like people started mimicking different part of the bodies on a chip, right? So you can't say that we don't have models that people didn't cover it. But not necessarily all these models that the people develop it is the best model, or in terms of throughput, in terms of precision, in terms of the design itself that mimics the physiology and anatomy of the tissue, or complexity or not complexity. So still there is room to work on even the tissues that people have worked. So that's why you see many of liver on a chip. You see many cancer on a chip. You see many, because people think from different point of view to the specific problem, but they bring their because we are different in thinking, we bring new designs, we bring new things in the research. So I don't have a specific answer to your question, but I can say that all the tissues have been modeled so far on chip.
Alexander?
Yeah, so you mentioned that organ on a chip technology offers very high throughput, which can speed up the testing. But would you say there might be a bottleneck effect in terms of timing because it takes long to develop and to actually fabricate these chips?
So the question was, even though it could maximize throughput, what about the time it takes to actually produce those?
No, very interesting and valid question. So yes, there is a preparation time because you were involved in that preparation. For example, a stem cell differentiation. So it takes 1 month to prepare these cells. It takes, for example, 2-3 weeks to put these cells on the chip to create the heart muscles, for example, in this specific example that we had. But so everything you will do it in parallel, right? Once you have them, you have the cells, you have the chips, you can actually create 1,000 times. And this is not by human. This is supposed to be by robots. So everything in pharma tech is going to be robotic, with the system that it brings the hydrogels, put the cells on the chips, so everything in a dishes, right? In a petri dishes. So there is no involvement of human in pharma tech because everything should be fast and should be robotic with minimal manipulation of human to actually avoid the contamination, to actually speed up the process, and automate the process as well. So this is gonna be, I think it answers your question, but I'm not worried about this time because once you have the cell bank, everything ready, so you can start and make thousands of chips and test thousands of molecules at the same time.
Thank you. Zoe?
All the structure that you have planned, which one is the most difficult and which one is most difficult?
So which structures are easy and which structures are difficult?
Very good question. So let me tell you something. So most of our tissues in our body, they have different cell types and they have different matrix and different structures. Some of them are easy to print. For example, let's think of a skin. A skin is really like a 2-3 layers tissue. It has some vasculature inside, but it's easy to print. But then think of heart and kidney that has multiple cells, and also the structure itself with vasculatures, with nerves inside, with all these kind of complex geometry. So kidney, heart, these are the most difficult things to print in the lab because you should have multiple cell types, multiple different materials to tune the mechanical properties on different kind of the tissues or organ, and vascularization and neural network, in the tissue. So we are very far from printing heart and kidney.
Great, thank you. So we have 5 more minutes to wrap up, and Roxana.
Yes, I have a question. You worked with a lot of people, you did collaborative projects. So I was wondering if you have future projects with other people and which one are you the most excited about?
So future work and future collaboration.
I would really love to connect with people who are basically astronauts. I try to contact our own astronaut, David Saint-Jacques, who is the alumni of engineering physics of Polytechnic, through the foundation, through the alumni foundation. But it seems that there's no contact from him. But this guy, let me tell you a story about David Saint-Jacques. So he actually, he was in the space for the longest kind of trip, more than 200 days. and then just before pandemic in 2019, and then he came back to Earth, and then he went on coma for 1 month or 2 months. So then COVID hit after he got back to normal. So then he decided to go to med school to help people. So he has a degree in engineering physics, and he's an astronaut. Now he's a medical doctor too, after these many years. So these are superhumans, right? So they actually do lots in their life. So one thing that is really I want to do this microgravity research, tissue engineering under microgravity research to study aging. So if we can reverse aging.
Now, one thing that you're very good at is communicating your science, and you do it great in class. You also do it well on LinkedIn. Can you talk to us a little bit about, how you promote research? What is important? How you find the time, and any advice you may have for students?
So science communication is important because the work that we do in the lab is very important, but communicate it to people to understand in a simple or lay language or plain language is more important, So in today's lecture, I try to don't use the jargons, for example, a specific jargon about rheological property, blah, 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 blah. So sometimes I try to use like simple words, wording. So the post or the things that I do on social media is basically more for my students to motivate them, their work actually, to advocate their work on LinkedIn, because some of them, they are not willing to do that. So I'll try to actually motivate them through posting their work and achievements on LinkedIn. So the way that I do it, I learn it during the way. It's that science that we do in the lab is one more main part, but communication is another thing. So then by communicating, you actually bring attention of people that they can use these platforms, right? So, and then it actually triggers collaborations. So I receive many messages from students, from other PIs. Okay, I have at 3:00 this meeting with another neurosurgeon that wants to have this epilepsy on a chip. He wants to actually, he doesn't have any idea about on a chip technology, organ on a chip technology. But because I posted, he texted me on LinkedIn, message me. Okay, is there anything like epilepsy on a chip? I said, yes, we can discuss it. So yes, science communication is important, but also it depends on the character of the person. Some people are introverts, some people are extrovert. And, but I encourage you to talk about the important work that you're doing in the lab or in your research with other people, public, in high schools, and to your grandma. So in the lay language, so they understand. Yeah.
So you heard Houman, you all have Twitter accounts. That's part of their grade actually. So, interact, tell the world about this lecture, and continue sharing on social media.
Yes, thank you so much.
So thank you very much once again. It was really great to have you.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the last thing is, what kind of